And I think it's important to note that at the same time that I was doing this, I was taking a full maxed out class schedule to get my 150 units. I was commuting 30 minutes to college. I went to Cal Baptist, which is in California. And I was also 6 months away from getting married. And so we were beginning to plan. Yeah, we were
Busy,
beginning to
busy.
plan. And
Yeah.
after I finished my classes, I would go and I'd work in the tutoring center. I did financial peer coaching, and I did accounting tutoring and business tutoring and finance tutoring. And so, and I think I was TAing as well for a professor. So it was like the hours were, I would go to like the college early at like 6:30 a.m. I would do my 2 hours of studying, or hour and a half, and then I would go class, and then I would do school, like not school, but the stuff in the tutoring center till the end of the day,
Mhm.
basically. And so most days I would be there from like 6:30 a.m. to like sometimes 8 p.m. at night, and then drive home. And so it was kind of crazy, and that's how it was up until I graduated at the end of April.
Welcome to another episode of the CPA Exam Experience Podcast from SuperfastCPA. I'm Logan, and in today's interview, you're going to hear Nate and I talking to Tim. Tim has a pretty cool story, and I think this is a great podcast episode that I'm going to direct people to because a lot of people have questions about the CMA exam when it comes to the CPA exam and the Superfast CPA materials. We get questions all the time like, hey, do you guys have materials for the CMA exam? Or can I use your materials and your strategies for the CMA exam? And turns out, according to Tim, yes, you can definitely use the Superfast CPA strategies for the CMA exam. And you'll hear that in his interview. Tim is someone that started studying for the CPA exam before he had even finished his schooling. And before he even did the CPA exam, he did the CMA exam. And he was able to pass the first CMA exam by himself, but then he failed the second part, and he was kind of looking around, prepping for taking the CPA exam, and he found Superfast CPA. And he figured, you know what, before I even jump into CPA, I'm going to start studying for the CMA exam. And so he used the Superfast CPA Pro course ideas and strategies to take the CMA exam, passed that, and then right after that, he went and studied for BEC, passed BEC, and you'll see throughout this interview that he did really well. He was very busy, he was doing school, he was working a lot of the time as a tutor or as a TA, and especially he was planning a wedding. He was going to get married in 6 months. So he had a big motivation to be done with the CPA exam before he got married because he didn't want to have to be worrying about that when he first got married. And again, as you'll see in this interview, he did awesome. He passed all of his exams, and he found out that he passed just a few weeks before he got married. So he was able to do it, and this interview is just an awesome interview. I think you're going to love it. So let's get to it, but just before we jump in, just one reminder to everybody to go check out our free 1-hour webinar training on superfastcpa.com. This is something that a lot of people see. This is a lot of times the thing that people watch before they become members of Superfast CPA, because we will teach you the key ingredients to passing the CPA exam. And from there, of course, people like to purchase it. So make sure you go check that out. Again, it's only 1 hour. It is free, and it will be super helpful. And with all that said, let's dive straight into the interview with Tim.
Going back to the beginning, how did you get into accounting and then decide to do the CPA in general?
Yeah, honestly, I wanted to do like business type stuff, but I realized that the jobs weren't as strong in business or finance. And so my dad and my grandpa were both CPAs, partners at firms, and so I kind of had seen their time that they had and how they were successful. And I was like, hey, like, why don't I just learn this accounting stuff and then see where that leads me? And that's kind of what happened. And so when I realized that I wanted to do accounting as my major in school, it pretty soon became, how do I get the 150 unit requirement? How do I get the CPA tests complete? How do I get the best internship that I can get? And that was kind of my focus during that time.
Cool.
Nice.
So from when did you start studying for the CPA? Was it during school? Was it right after you got your 150? When did
Yeah,
that start?
so I don't know when this like came into effect. I'm in California, but I heard something about they would allow you to start taking the exams 6 months before you graduate with your bachelor's degree. And it seemed like that was a more,
With your
yeah, that was a
bachelor's,
more
wow.
recent, I guess, requirement that they made, or I guess they allowed. And so when I heard that, I was like, okay, I should probably start looking into this thing. And so I think during the latter end of my junior year of college, I was like, okay, I should probably be thinking about this. Or even before that, I was doing some work for Becker, representing them on the campus. And so I kind of had, that's kind of how I learned about that requirement. And I was like, okay, Becker would give me the free CPA materials, or they would give me the free CMA, which is the Certified Management Accountant. And at that point, I had an internship with KPMG, and I knew that if they would give me a full time offer, they would give me the CPA materials on Becker. And so I said, hey, I'll try to take this CMA test with the Becker free materials. And so that summer, after, in between my internship, between my junior and senior year, I took the CMA exams, and I took part one and I did well. And then I took part two and I didn't pass part two by like 10 points. And so then I was like, okay, well, I guess maybe I'll try that again another time. But what I knew was then going into my first semester of my senior year, I needed to get the ball rolling with the requirements. And I knew that when I graduated with my bachelor's degree, I would have 151 units to meet the 150 requirement. And so I said, okay, let's get the ball rolling with in California, it's called the CBA. And then you have to do it with like a universal countrywide organization as well, the NASBA, I think. And so I got that stuff going in like November. And then I said, I think that was around the time that I started listening to your guys' stuff, like the Superfast CPA podcast. And I was like, this sounds like pretty good. Like these, I guess, study tips and methods sounds pretty good. And so I said, during that time, once I was able to schedule my CPA tests, I was like, I think I'm going to do it. And so I paid for the pro tips package, and the
The
pro
pro course.
course, and then
Yeah.
also all the materials and kind of just the bundle that you guys have. And before I had a little bit of time, and I was like, hey, I'm going to go back to this CMA test real quick before I jump onto CPA. And so I said, why don't I apply the Superfast Pro course methods to studying for that, even though I don't have all the materials, just to try it out. That's kind of why I did the CMA, partially because you were able to get it for free as a college student, like all the tests. And then you are also, although I had to pay to take it again, but that's okay. And I got the study materials for free. So I was like, hey, why don't I just give it a shot again using Becker, CMA, using the Superfast Pro course tips. And I was able to pass it I think like 3 weeks maybe. And then after that, I was like, okay, now it's time to take BEC, which at the time was a year away from getting taken out. And so I was like, I want to knock this one out first. And that was the same exact material as those CMA tests.
Yeah, I was going to ask that.
That's
Yeah,
cool.
so there was a lot of crossover, and I ended up doing really well. I think I studied for BEC for like 5 weeks maybe, and I think I got like a 93 on it. And I was using the super fast materials as well in like with the Becker materials, but I quickly, like, I don't know if you guys specifically say not to take all these exams in between that Becker has, but I took one and I was like, I'm not feeling this. And so after that, I didn't take a single one after that the whole time. I just kind of did the daily things. And I think it's important to note that at the same time that I was doing this, I was taking a full maxed out class schedule to get my 150 units. I was commuting 30 minutes to college. I went to Cal Baptist, which is in California. And I was also 6 months away from getting married. And so we were beginning to plan. Yeah, we were beginning to plan. And after I finished my classes, I would go and I'd work in the tutoring center. I did financial peer coaching, and I did accounting tutoring and business tutoring and finance tutoring. And so, and I think I was TAing as well for a professor. So it was like the hours were, I would go to like the college early at like 6:30 a.m. I would do my 2 hours of studying, or hour and a half, and then I would go class, and then I would do school, like not school, but the stuff in the tutoring center till the end of the day,
Hmm.
basically. And so most days I would be there from like 6:30 a.m. to like sometimes 8 p.m. at night, and then drive home. And so it was kind of crazy. And that's how it was up until I graduated at the end of April. And so I went and I took BEC. That was the beginning of February 2023. And then next I took audit, which I was in the middle of the audit class at that time.
Nice.
And so I hadn't actually finished the class. I ended up doing better on the audit CPA exam than I did on the audit test final, but that's okay. It ended up being fine. But I I was studying for that test, and so I spent like another 5 or 6 weeks after that to take audit, and same ordeal. You know, studying in the morning. I would listen to the audio notes as I was driving back and forth on my commute to school. I would, in between classes, I would sometimes review the notes on the app or take the quizzes. I think those things were really helpful. Um, and yeah, the big thing was just jamming through multiple choice. I didn't really touch the Sims either until like right before, like the 2 weeks before I took the exam, which maybe is a little crazy, but I started looking at the Sims a little later each time. And then we had KPMG paid for my, like the whole Becker package. And so I got this thing called Final Review,
Hmm.
and that was the only time that I would listen to lectures, because they were very summarized, and they were also, I could put them on two
Hmm.
times speed and just kind of like in the days leading up to my exam, I could just kind of take them really quick. Um, so that was the only time that I really listened to lectures. I think that's one thing that you guys say, not really to focus on, more so focus on multiple choice, and I think that was very helpful for me. Um, so yeah, audit BEC. I took audit, and I think I got like a 79. So that was not as good as the 93 from before, but that's okay.
But you passed.
Yeah,
Doesn't matter.
exactly. So, and it gets crazier than that, but or it gets more of a close call. But then after that, I was like, I'm gonna take reg, and I scheduled reg for 2 days after my college graduation, which was probably like
Wow.
6 to 8 weeks after I took audit. And I said, okay, I'm going to try to do this, but it got really busy leading up to graduation, and reg was the more challenging, probably the most challenging for me. I was like, because I'm doing audit now at KPMG. That's what I interned in. I did an internship in
Yeah.
tax, but it was like at this point a year and a half before that. I'd worked at a tax firm that was 2+ years before that. I hadn't touched this stuff in a while. My tax class was also a long time before that, and so I think reg was the most challenging for me, because of those aspects, and because I was really, trying to focus on audit and preparing for my career in that. And so when it got close to my graduation, I was like, oh man, like I'm not even through all this material. Like I don't want to do this. And so I had to pay like, I don't know, $30 or $50 to reschedule, which
Hmm.
wasn't the end of the world. And so I rescheduled it about like 3 or 4 weeks later, and I actually took it in the middle of May, on my birthday. I said, "Hey, at least I can take the day off work and be able to take the exam, and then enjoy myself after, and kind of spend time with family." And so, as we got closer to that point, I was still doing these things, but I had graduated college, and I actually had like a month off before I started working for a kind of had like a job in between my
Okay.
KPMG
Yeah.
start. And so I think it actually became harder for me without the structure. So I was still
Mm-hmm.
doing those things like the 2 hours, but it was, I don't know, I feel like I missed a day here and there. And I think just there was some nervousness about taking reg because I felt the least prepared. And that
Hmm.
was where I honestly had to give it to God, and I had to say, "Hey, God, like I'm letting this go. I'm trusting you. If I don't get this done, and the whole goal was to get it done before I got married in July. So that's kind of the
Yeah, that
context.
makes
And I
sense.
talked to some people who were like, "Yeah, you have to do that." I talked to some other people that said you're crazy, in so many words. But I literally had to give it to God, and I had to say, "Hey, like this is it. If I don't pass, I trust you. Maybe I'll have to take them while I'm married. It might be, but." Um, and so I went and I took that exam, and I came out of it having no idea how I was going to do. But I just said, "Hey, I'm going to trust God, and hey, if you," I kind of prayed. I was like, if you help me to pass this, like make it clear that it was you, not me. And so then I just went back to the drawing board, and I went.
I can guess the score.
So it was kind of crazy, but it actually strengthened my faith a bit. But I went back to take FAR, and then I said, okay, I'll look at the score when it comes out. And that's the other thing. At this point, you could still kind of take the test or schedule the test so you can get the scores really quickly. I know that's not the case now, but I hear,
that was last year.
maybe it's changing soon. But I think I got the scores a few weeks later, and I got a 76, and it wasn't a 75, but it was still like, oh shoot, thank you, Lord. Like it's not really, if it wouldn't have happened, I would have trusted God in the next steps. But it was kind of a real big blessing for me that I got that, and I said, hey, I don't have to touch this reg tax stuff again, even though a year later I'm auditing a tax provision for a client. But that's okay. We had a whole tax team helping us with that, so that was okay. But so then I was like, okay, now it's time to take FAR, which was the last one. And I actually felt like all right about that because I had been tutoring accounting, and FAR is more advanced, but I had the basics pretty down because I'd been spending a year spending so many hours teaching these basic concepts. And so I think I took another, I don't know, 6 to 8 weeks. I think I took it at the end of June, so it was like a month and a half when I took FAR, and that was 3 weeks before my wedding. And so at the same time, we're looking for apartments to move to, doing the final preparations, doing different like bachelor type trips and stuff like that. And so it was kind of crazy. And I had started work at the beginning of June, working 32 hours a week in a government position, government accounting office. And so I was back to doing the 6:30 a.m. Study sessions before work. This time, no school, but before work. And it was nice because I was working with some people that had taken the CPA exams. And so I was able to talk to them, and they were able to ask, oh, hey, how's it going with this? Like different things. And that was kind of cool. And so I took it, and I think like at this point, it was like 2 weeks before the wedding, I got my score, and it was at 83. And so I said, okay, I'm done. And that was it. And ever since then, I've been not thinking about CPA exams, except for when my peers ask me. There's people who are starting at KPMG, people that were at my college, and they'll ask, oh, hey, like, how do you do these things? And I said, hey, by the grace of God. And also, I'd highly recommend that you watch this SuperfastCPA podcast, because it's going to say everything that I could just tell you. But it'd be better if you just watch this thing. And I think the concepts really are helpful. Having everything summarized, one, and then just also applying those pro course tips, I think were huge. And yeah, I had to pay a little bit because I didn't have to pay for anything else besides your guys' package. But I said, hey, I'm going to invest in this because I want to knock these things out before I get married and before I start full time. And yeah, that's what happened.
That's awesome.
Yeah. I got a few questions in there. So I guess first, clearly you sat down at some point, watched the pro course videos, and got clear on the strategies. But where you were in college and you were going from CPA study straight to, college study, I mean, what things were in there that were any different than, like, what things were new ideas to you from the pro course compared to what you'd already been doing?
I think the way that you guys spell it out is specifically dialed in for the different courses that you have, like, I don't know, Becker, Surgeon, Rogers, like all those different ones. And I think like the idea of like skipping a lecture, you can't do that in college, obviously. But these courses that we have, they allow you to have that flexibility to choose kind of what you want. And so in my college studies, fortunately, my course load was full, but I had left some of my easier classes for that final semester. So they weren't all like hardcore accounting. I did a finance minor. Just for fun, I took like the basic finance class, personal finance, just for fun, because I had already picked all my I'd already taken all my classes that were harder. And so I was able to kind of cruise through those classes, fortunately. Um, and so then my big focus was the CPA test. And honestly, the professors sometimes there were professors that would see me there at 6:30 a.m. in the business building. And because I had a class at like 8:15, 2 days a week, I had a class at 8:45 the other, 2 or 3 days of the week. And the professors, I don't know if they thought I was like working on like their work or something, but they were always like, they would say hi and stuff. And I appreciated it. And if they would have asked, I would have told them what I was doing. I think maybe the accounting professors knew, but it was kind of like my focus was ultimately getting those tests done. And I think my
Yeah.
school kind of took a back step as long as I was passing the classes, and being able to
Yeah.
graduate, which at that point I had so many units that like I probably could have botched some of those classes, but I mean, it was good that I didn't, so I could keep all those units.
Yeah, I mean, being done before so you found out you had passed a few weeks before your wedding,
Yeah,
is
I
that
actually
right?
we did like a bachelor's trip with I had like four other groomsmen, and we went to Utah, to a cabin. And the day
Hmm,
after that trip, was when I got my scores. So that was, I think, maybe
nice.
12 days, 13, 14 days before the wedding. So yeah, about 2 weeks. So if I didn't pass FAR, um, I would have just hit pause for a month and then revisited it.
Mm.
Um,
Hmm.
but thankfully, that's not what happened.
What part of Utah?
It was near Bryce Canyon.
Oh, hey, I live pretty close to that
Okay.
area.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, I live in southern
Okay.
Utah. We're both Nate and I are both in Utah, just different parts of Utah. But Bryce
Oh,
Canyon's
yeah.
awesome. It's so
Yeah, my
beautiful.
buddy has a cabin in
Yeah.
Hatch, Utah, which is a
Wow,
small
that's
little
Hmm.
awesome.
town out there, but it was his grandparents, so he let us use it, and it was awesome to be out there for sure.
So like hiking, you guys were doing
Yeah,
hiking, yeah.
yeah, and that's a big thing for me. Me and my buddies like to go out and hike. So while I was taking the exams, I had the guy who was my best man in my wedding. Him and I, we would hike every Saturday, and so most of the time during that exam taking season, I would continue to do that, which was, I think, a really good outlet. The other thing that I would continue to do is
Hmm.
we had a Sunday night, young adults, group at church. And I really made an effort to make as many of those as possible because it was super good to have a community of people with the same values who would really come alongside me,
Yeah.
during this season. And so that was really important. And then I had some stuff at school related to my faith as well. And then obviously going to church services, but I really made an effort not to compromise on those things, because they were important to me, more important than the CPA exam, or graduating for that matter. And then the hiking was just a good physical outlet. But that's what I
Yeah.
liked about this program, because you guys really say don't really. I mean, yeah, you need to focus on the exams, but if you're knocking out your study sessions, you don't have to really compromise as much as maybe the trying to get the
Yes.
100% on Becker, like guaranteed that you pass thing that they have, which I
Yeah.
think you can do. And I tell people, like, yeah, if you want to guarantee that you're going to pass, like, go do that thing, but it's going to take you way more time, and you're going to have to give up way more
Hmm.
things. And it's going to, I don't know.
And even then, it's not a guarantee. Even with
Yeah.
that, that's the what
Yeah.
that's what gets people so frustrated is they do exactly what you just said, 100% on all the Becker stuff or whatever their course is, and then they still go fail.
Mm,
And they spent hundreds of hours potentially studying for that exam. But I really appreciate what you're saying there because I felt the same way that I was super busy when I was doing this. I was a young father, master's degree, working all those things, very busy like yourself. And I really appreciated still having time for life. Like I was still able to, it wasn't a lot of time, but I still had some time to do stuff. And yeah, I think that's a big difference there, like, yeah, you still have to sacrifice a little, but you were able to still maintain your faith, maintain some hobbies like going hiking and I'm sure you were busy with your fiance doing stuff with her, like, doing activities with her. And I'm sure you were just super busy but you were able to do it, and that's what the whole point of all this is.
Yeah. I kind of hate this phrase because my dad would always say this to me growing up, but the discipline really gives you a lot of freedom, being highly disciplined specifically to the CPA study, nailing your main session in the morning, and then you can study from your phone and make another big difference throughout the day. But yeah, then you're freed up. As long as you do that, your evenings, most of your weekends, you can still do that kind of stuff. Yeah. One thing I was going to ask, did you worry about the Becker dashboard because you use Becker? Were you trying to get all green, get it all filled out 100%?
Yeah, so when I decided that I wasn't really going to mess around with the lectures and not hit a lot of the sims either, I kind of said I don't really care about this thing anymore. I did care. I think there's like a percentage for multiple choice, and I think I cared more about that, making sure that I got that thing closed out. But it's interesting because there's a contrast between when I first took the CMA exams using the Becker, and my goal was to get 100% on everything. And I think if I would have done that on the last exam that I failed for that one before I went and I retook it using super fast methods, I think I would have passed, but I kind of rushed through everything. But really, it was it took a lot of time, and I wasn't doing anything during those few weeks when I first took this CMA, and so it was fine. But I definitely liked the idea of not being dependent on getting that 100% complete thing, because I felt like there was so much. My brain was like almost fried with so much stuff, and it felt like it was just a lot of wasted time versus I heard about this like 20-80, 80-20 principle. And like, I feel like just doing the multiple choice and focusing on that and not worrying about the whole percentage kind of goes a long way towards that, I guess, 80% benefit on 20% of the effort, maybe. I mean, maybe that's not exactly, but
yes. Right.
Yeah. With the you mentioned the multiple choice questions and kind of having that be your main focus. So you mentioned a busy schedule. When you sat down to study, what did that look like? It seems like you had SuperfastCPA CPA pretty much from the beginning with the CPA studying. So yeah, what did that look like for you when you sat down
yeah.
to study?
So as soon as I started my spring semester, which was like, I don't know, mid-January, I every day almost. I mean, I'd say 5 days a week was the goal. There were here and there were days that were missed, but for the most part, it was the 5 Monday through Friday. I would go in. I'd leave home at like 6 a.m. and I would go to like the business building. They had this little room with computers, and I would hole up in there, and I would just grind it out. So I'd focus on the multiple choice. I think I had like I basically whenever I started an exam, I kind of printed out like a calendar, and I said, okay, I need to get through these sections at this time because I had my exam, at least for the first two, I had the exam already scheduled. After that, it was more, I guess, flexible. But I think I started and I had BEC and I had audit scheduled, and because I bought all of them on one ticket, and then I went ahead and I think that's how I did it. So I had this goal of, hey, I want to get through this amount each day. I don't know if it was like one section or two sections of the multiple choice, and I'd spend like an hour and a half on that, and then I'd go back and do the re-review where I took all the sections that I'd gone through so far, and then I would do like a 30-question multiple choice. And I think at first that was an harder thing because sometimes I would do not as well, other times I would do well, and I was like, oh shoot, like no good. But I think overall that was huge, and I think that's like advising that I think is a big differentiator that you guys have versus anything that I've heard, and it just makes so much sense because when I took those CMA exams before, like I would study everything, going for the 100%, and then a few days before the exam, I'd be like, oh shoot, this stuff at the beginning, I don't remember any of it, and so the way that re-review, it just was huge, along with covering the concepts in the audio notes and the quizzes and the reading notes. It's just the re-review, I think, was critical towards being able to knock those things out without like just losing everything that you put all this work into.
Yes, that's a huge thing. It's people, again, like you said, when you're trying to watch every video to the point that you feel like you understood it and read the chapter and then look at the MCQs, that takes so much time and it wears you out. And you're just every day you're like rewriting or you're recording over your short-term memory from the day before, basically. And then you're whatever it is, 5 to 7 or 8 weeks removed from, the first stuff you studied. There's just a lot of things there that logically, okay, now it makes sense why so many people fail. Whereas the re-review thing is just, it's huge. Like you said, it just makes sense. This stuff I'm spending so much time trying to learn in the first place, not only to remember it, but constantly re-hitting it gives you that like much deeper level understanding where you have this like functional command of it by the time you get to test day.
And not only that, it like makes sure you're good at multiple choice questions. And I want to ask about the sims in a second, but before that, since you were practicing multiple choice questions mostly, how did that translate to test day? Like on test day, were you getting through them pretty quickly? How did that go?
Yeah, it was interesting because at this point, like despite the fact that I went 4 for 4 on the CPA exams, I felt like I had spent a lot of time in those test center places because I had been there 3 times before for the CMA exams, and so it was like I was familiar with Prometric and all that, but it was interesting because I'd always try to time where I was at, and when I took BEC, I think I had like a ton of time. When I took, but I think some of them like it was like down to the wire. But part of the reason was because on some I would like still spend too much time on the multiple choice just because I was like, oh shoot, like did I do it right? But other times, like I really would try to look at the clock and time it out. And I think the majority of the time, the Sims probably I left more time for the Sims. One because I needed time to flesh out how to best respond, to at least get some points because my strong suit, I think, was the multiple choice overall. And it's like,
And I think that kind of needs to be everybody's strong point. You should still be strong at the Sims, hopefully, but being strong at multiple choice questions just helps in everything. Because if you're good at multiple choice questions, you're going to score well on them, but also you'll probably be pretty quick at them, and then you'll have tons of times for the Sims. Bringing up the Sims, you kind of mentioned you didn't study them too much, except for maybe a little bit before. What was your strategy with the Sims? Because I think a lot of people have said something similar is kind of saving the Sims till close to the exam. So what was that
Yeah,
like?
I think for me, like the multiple choice was just more straightforward to study, and Sims are kind of all over the place. And so I was like, this thing is like not really productive right now. So I'm trying to remember because like I know there might have been some weekends where I hit Sims a little bit, but most of the time, like it would be like the few weeks before when I went to the final review, and the final review had Sims, and those ones I would go through. Like if I got anything close to 100%, it was the multiple choice and that final review. But I didn't even take the exams for the final review. It was more so I'm going to listen to the lectures at 2 times speed while I'm probably doing something else. I'm going to take the multiple choice, which is it's kind of a summarized thing like I'd already been doing on my own, and then I'm going to do the Sims on those final reviews. So that was more so my strategy, and I felt like if for some reason like there was a sim that I looked at during that final review that I was like, I'm not so sure about this. Sometimes I'd take time to kind of understand it just so I could see that model, and other times I was like, I don't know if this one's worth my time, and we'll just see what happens with that. I'm not a huge fan of The Sims, to be honest, because it's just you could get anything.
I don't think anybody
Yeah,
is.
it's like you could get any of them, and so like you could learn every single type, but it's like there's not a high return on that investment because they could throw you something you've never seen before, too.
Yes. Yeah. I think that we always mention this, there's two high value strategies for the Sims. And the first one is being good at multiple choice questions, because then you have tons of time for the Sims. And then the other strategy is less kind of like you were saying, like you don't need to see every single type because you'll probably see something different on test day, but more so at least having some experience with the Sims. So, okay, I see this and how to kind of pick it apart, how to kind of break it down so that you can work through it. I think that's the big skill with Sims. There are some things that are tested only in sims. So, there could be something with that. But yeah, the main idea is just knowing how to kind of be comfortable breaking it down, like taking the time to read through the stuff and everything. Just to clarify, were you saying that you only did the sims from Becker's final review? So you didn't even go back and pick certain sims. You just did it from that final review test, or
I
is
think
that what you're
that
saying?
was, yeah, for the most part. I might have clicked into some here and there. But I think as I took each exam, it got to a point where I was like, yeah, I'm just going to look at the final review ones and kind of not really worry about the other ones. I think there might have been a
Okay.
time where I was like, I'm just curious, I'll click into this. And then I was like, I
Yeah.
don't want to look at that one anymore.
The other thing that is big that goes into the sims is that constant re-review throughout your whole
Hmm.
process, because that gives you that, like I said, just that high, like, functional understanding of the topics. And so as long as you nail the MCQs and you have enough time to sit there and kind of figure out, okay, this sim has like 10 exhibits, but you have to have time to, like you said, just kind of make sense of it for a minute. And then your knowledge of the topic, you can apply it.
Hmm.
But yeah, it's like a combination of three things, and primarily it's solved before you walk into the
Mm.
testing center.
Hmm.
It's kind of the whole cliche. It goes back to your daily process.
Yeah.
Yeah. One thing I was going to ask. So with your reg story, I'm assuming when you said, I'm just going to give this up to God, but you were still studying each day, right? It's when you say that, you're kind of meaning that you just still didn't feel great about the material. And that's the aspect of, okay, I'm going to keep doing my part and then just see what
Yeah,
happens.
Yeah.
Is that what
exactly.
you mean?
So I can be faithful in my side of it, even though I feel like multiple times I would just kind of like be like, oh man, like this one, I'm not sure, but yeah, that's kind of why
Yeah.
I pushed my day back, my test date back by a few weeks, because I was like, I need to give this my full effort. And right now I'm about to graduate. Like I can't
Mhm.
really do that. And so, yeah, I definitely put
Hmm.
my full effort into it. But it was just, it
Yeah.
wasn't clicking like maybe some of the other ones were. Obviously, I was taking the audit class at the same time I took audit. I took the CMA before I took BEC. So I kind of had like this one was like, there was nothing right before it. I hadn't seen tax in a long time.
Mhm.
And so it was a lot more challenging. But yeah, I definitely did. I was like, I'm going to be faithful in what I can control, and I'm going to trust God with the rest. And so it was still like
Gotcha.
definitely putting in the effort. Each day.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think it was harder without having the structure, honestly, of the busyness too. But I definitely did
Oh,
still
Yeah.
do
yeah.
it. It just felt like maybe it was more spread out in the sense of I'm not forced to do it at 6:30
Yeah.
a.m. Sometimes I'm doing it at 8 a.m. or 10 a.m. And it just felt like maybe it took me longer sometimes to get through the same amount of multiple choice questions, just because there wasn't a hard deadline of classes starting at 8:15. Um, so that was a
Yeah.
challenge,
Yeah.
but I definitely did. Yeah, I did my part, and I was faithful in that. And thankfully, I trusted God, and it ended up working out. But if it hadn't, I would have trusted Him still, and continued doing stuff. But
But
Yeah.
you passed it. Yeah. And I think there's something to be said about that structure. I've learned this a lot about myself just in general, even outside of the CPA. I'm always like, oh, I can't wait to not to have my day off or whatever, but then if I don't have something to do, then I just feel like I'm wasting my time, and I feel like I procrastinate a lot of things. And I think that's very true for the CPA. Is you have to still kind of make yourself have a structure no matter what you're doing, whether that's work in school or just work or even studying full time. Make that a requirement to be kind of disciplined and have a specific time, because that will just make it programmed into you, instead of, oh, I'll study at 10 o'clock today, but then something happens and then you don't study at 10, and things like that. So I like what you said, that even though it was kind of harder, you still were able to make it happen. Yeah.
And I think the other
Yeah.
thing is you had an effective process
Yes.
figured out. That's a big thing that, you know, whatever you were doing, following our strategies and whatever, your personal version of it, it worked for your first two exams. And then reg, the one you had the least kind of background experience in, felt more confusing throughout it, but your process still, worked, obviously.
Mm-hmm.
And
And
so,
you kind of mentioned the like the mini sessions that we have. What was, you kind of mentioned it a little bit already, but what was your, like, when did you listen to audios? When did you take mini quizzes? When did you read the review notes? How were those
Yeah,
helpful?
yeah. I mean, I feel like, you know, depending on the day, I was able to dial into it more or less. But I made an effort to, a lot of times when I'd be driving, to put that thing on. And I was
Mm-hmm.
driving a lot. The commute to school was like 30 minutes. It could be longer certain days. So I was doing that 5 days a week. At that time, my church was 30 minutes in the opposite direction. So I was going out there as much as I could as well on the weekends. And so I think sometimes I might have listened to that on the way back from those things. It kind of just depended on if I wanted to have a lot of content in my brain or I just wanted kind of to relax and quiet. But oftentimes, for sure, with school, I was listening to that thing the most. And then with the notes, I think that the notes or the quizzes I would kind of hit like in between classes, in between when I had tutoring appointments. Sometimes I would have people who didn't show up or would be a little late, and so I'd have some time in between. It was kind of like, I think my goal was to, like, whenever I picked up my phone, to look at that thing. I
Yeah.
don't know if I was
yeah,
100% successful at that, but I think that was a good goal because what I like about the quizzes, for one, they're super quick to do, and they're
hmm
relatively simple, easy to pull up. Not they're not simple, but like simplified versions of what maybe you'd have in
yeah,
Becker, and so it allows you to
Mhm.
get some touch points. And same thing with the notes. I would kind of scroll through those. I think I would normally try to do like a little bit of notes, and then I'd do a little bit of multiple choice, and then I'd call it a day, and then hit it again another time during the day. And it's just, yeah, it kept the stuff on your mind a lot more than just, oh, I'm studying for a few hours. Okay, I'm not going to hit this again until tomorrow. And it's nice
yes,
because it's also like the notes and the quizzes aren't just on what you're studying. They hit stuff that you might see later, or they might like
Mhm.
be stuff that you've already seen. And so I think that also helped because it was like, I'm hitting this thing in Becker now, and I've seen it a little bit. That's another thing that I think I don't think I mentioned, but Becker does have like a really high level summary that you can print out. And before I looked at any section, I would skim through that summary, kind of as another touch point.
mm,
And then it would kind of align. I could see how it kind of aligned with what I'd already been reading or listening to or taking quizzes on. And I think it just, I don't know, it just allowed for some connections that helped as then I was going through the multiple choice.
yeah. So with our audios, did you kind of? It sounds like the way we kind of recommend to use them is just listen to them all the way through, regardless of where you're at in your Becker or your main course. Is that
Yeah,
how you did
for
it?
the most part, sometimes
Okay.
I think I would select a certain section if I felt like maybe I would want to hit
hmm
that at the beginning. But really, my objective
Yeah.
was to just go through it all. I mean, sometimes I would like forget, I think, and I'd like re-listen to something because I was like, oh shoot, like
hmm
did I do this one before? But yeah, the goal
hmm
was to just go straight through, and I think I'd seen your guys' recommendation on that, and so I kind of took that to heart.
Nice.
Awesome.
Yeah, I love the audio notes too. When I was doing it, and I hope that people don't mind listening to me now. It's weird. It's weird. I would listen to Nate, and now there's people listening
That's
to me. It's
funny.
weird.
Yeah.
Uh, yeah, but with the so we kind of asked this similar. I mean, I feel like I kind of already know the answer, but did you do anything to celebrate passing? You got married, so that's probably a pretty darn big celebration there. But has there been anything else like specifically about the CPA, or was it more the relief of I'm done now? I can just focus on getting married and stuff like
Yeah, I
that.
think the big thing was getting married. I don't think there was really anything too crazy each time. Although, I mean, I think it was nice, like the days that I did take an exam, that then I could kind of relax after that. Although when I was in school, I just went back to class, which was kind of lame. But it was kind of cool
Yeah,
that that
yeah.
last test that I took, or actually, yeah, the last test so far, I took that in the same area where I believe my dad and my grandpa both took their CPA exam. It wasn't the same testing center, but it was right where they used to live. And so I thought that was kind of cool.
Mm-hmm.
And then after that, I was able to, my sister was working at a Christian summer camp in the mountains. And so I was able to drive up to there, and I was kind of just driving through the mountains. And I was like, wow, I'm so grateful that these things are, potentially done. And then at the same time, I told my now wife that, hey, I can't really look at apartments until I've gotten these things done, and it's 2 weeks before getting married. That's no good. And so a family from church had reached out to us saying, hey, we have this studio, and we were like, oh, like I don't know about that. Like we looked at it, it was nice, but it was really small. And then literally the day before I took the FAR test, my last test, the family told us, hey, we also have a 1-bed that was unavailable until a few days ago when someone backed out, and now it's available. And so as I was driving to see my sister in the mountains, I called up that guy and I said, hey, we're going to take that apartment. And it was cool because I told my wife, hey, I'm not going to think about this thing as much until after. And here we are 30 minutes after I took the exam, and I'm saying, yes, we're going to take this apartment without any effort on my part.
Yeah,
And
nice.
so it was a really happy time. And I think I went to like this river, and I was like eating a sandwich, and I was just like, oh man, I'm so grateful that these things, they might be done. I mean, I'm trusting God again with this one, but at least like I've done all that I can do now. And so there wasn't like a formal like celebration, but after each test, I think my mom would like put up like a thing in my room that had like a congratulations, you passed, or like the other thing I had was I had my fiance, then the wife now, write like a letter to me, and then I had some of like my mom or my dad write something, and then I had my grandma wrote something, and I had them all on the wall, and they put like Bible verses and stuff. And so every time that I was studying from home, I could look up and see those things. And that was a big encouragement. But yeah, no crazy celebration. I think KPMG gives a bonus. So when I was a month or two
Yes,
in,
I'm sure.
I got a bonus, which was nice. But I ended up using that to pay off some stuff, and ended up knocking out the only, I guess, student loans that we had, my wife and I. And so that was
That's definitely
God's
worth
provision. Although I didn't get to really enjoy that bonus money. But they did reimburse my, obviously they paid for Becker, they paid bonus, and then they reimbursed my exam fees. So as long as I paid for the exams up front, then they would cover once I passed. So it was kind of nice to have that. That was a nice little thing, and being able to knock out those the little bit of debt that we had was huge. I think for us, just going into beginning of marriage. Feeling good.
poor young married people.
Yeah, and we both went to
Yeah.
private Christian school, and so it was definitely a blessing to be able to say, hey, like I took these exams, now we can put that stuff to bed and just focus on our marriage now.
I'm sure your wife has appreciated you being done. Like you didn't even have to worry about it.
Yeah, she was supportive, but I definitely like there was a few times where I was like, oh man, like I'm so busy, like I don't even know how this thing's gonna go. And she was super encouraging. But I think it was huge being able to like have our, we had like a year anniversary like a few months ago, and it's like we didn't have to do the CPA. Yeah, I had accounting work and I was in busy season and all that, but like that thing would have been just looming over our heads. Huge blessing.
Yeah, just being done, especially with all that stuff you had coming up. That's what a relief. That's the best part, is just being done by far.
Yeah. Never having to worry about it. And you have the CMA too. So like you did a whole bunch of stuff too. That's awesome.
So I mean that was I kind of had that idea. It was a crazy idea when I was in my junior year. I was like, oh man, like I can get this thing paid for, like the organization that puts it out will pay for it. I'll get the test exam. Like, oh, why don't I just give it a shot? And so I said, hey, I'll do that. It's not as recognized where I'm working now, but I think there's a value just to have it and to have that experience. And the other thing is like I felt like my cost accounting class that I took in school, I feel like I didn't like do as well. I didn't learn as much in that. And so CMA is a lot of cost accounting stuff. And so that was another reason why I was like, I'm going to go to KPMG right now. Like I need to know these things. Maybe, I don't know. I mean, since then I haven't really had to know it, but I was like, I need to, everyone else is like getting all this stuff done. And so I was like, I need to, so that's part of the reason why I took the CMA, because it focuses more on that versus the CPA focused less on that. There was some of it, but it wasn't as much. So
that sounds like all the stuff I would absolutely despise studying. That was the kind of stuff that I really did not like in school. And you kind of mentioned this a little bit, but I know a lot of people do ask about this. So just one question about this. Did you feel like you pretty much already said this, do you feel like the pro course strategies applied really well to the CMA? We don't have CMA study materials, but the strategy, did that work quite well?
100%. Yeah, it was huge. So I think it was during my Christmas break, um, right before between semesters when I purchased everything. And I knew that the CPA was coming up, and I said, "Hey, this is my shot to do the CMA to make it right after I missed that last test by 10 points because I didn't put in enough work. Um, I want to look at these study pro course stuff." And so I went through all those, the videos and stuff that you guys have, and it was just helpful in solidifying those ideas, like planting the seeds and like all these things. And so I was like, yeah, I don't have the material that, I don't have super fast material for the CMA stuff, but I can still do a lot of this, at least in my, hour and a half study session, doing the re-review. I think I wrote like maybe some flashcards or something throughout the process, and I'd re-review those as well. Um, yeah, I think it was huge in being able to get that test done, and I think that kind of snowballed into being able to then go into the BEC test and knock it out. And then
Yeah.
from what I heard, the BEC, like the pass rates plummeted leading up to the end of the
Oh yeah.
year.
Oh yeah.
And
It
so
was
me
bad.
taking it,
It was
yeah,
really bad.
it's like me taking it in February, beginning of February, I think was huge instead of just waiting until the end. Cause yeah, it's the easiest test or whatever people would say. Like everyone's trying to take it all at once, And so
Hmm.
I was blessed
Hmm.
to be able to take the CMA, be able to apply those study, I guess, pro course tips, and then be able to knock that one out first.
That's
Yeah,
awesome.
that's awesome.
And you already had it figured out. Yeah. Going into the CPA, you already had a process. That's perfect.
Yeah, so you don't have this, this years long story of studying a ton but still failing or passing one but not in anyways. That's just really nice. From the beginning, you just got your process down, nailed them, and yeah,
You
done
mentioned one
whatever.
more thing, before we maybe start finishing up. You mentioned flashcards a little bit, but that's a big part of the process that we typically recommend. Did you have a process for flashcards, or at least a process for understanding topics that you really struggled with? What was that
Yeah.
like?
So yeah, I think, and I guess I forgot to mention that, but I did have like, so on my iPad so I had my computer up in front of me, and then I had my iPad below the computer, and I had like I would write, they had like a flashcards app. So I wouldn't be typing, but I would literally be writing
Hmm.
with like the Apple Pencil or whatever. And I was able to use like this
Nice.
Mm.
flashcards app that like you tap and then it flips. And so I put like something on the front and then I'd put like the answer on the back. And so whenever something that was harder came up, I would go and I'd use that thing. And so I had like flashcards for each test. And then I was able to kind of review those things throughout. And then going into the
Yeah.
exam, part of my final review process was going through those um, flashcards in a lot more detail. I remember I was on a long car ride right before I took audit, and I was having the person who was with me in the car just read me as I was driving, just read me the flashcard and then ask me the question. And I think that was another thing because it was like we were driving really far to visit someone, and it was like this is kind of crazy to be doing right before the test. But it was helpful because while we were driving
Yeah.
2 hours, 3 hours, like I could still kind of review a little bit while I was with that other person because I had written down all those flashcards. So I think that was another part that was pretty huge because I was able to kind of solidify some things that, yeah, I had a harder time with on the multiple choice. And
Mhm.
going back through that, I think was huge. I liked the iPad flashcard format
Mhm.
better than.
What app is that, by the
That's a
way?
good question. I don't have it with me. It was a weird
Okay.
name, but
It wasn't like Quizlet or Brainscape.
it
It was
was its
its own
own. I paid like
thing.
a few bucks for it.
Okay.
But yeah, it might have been
Anki?
that. Yeah, yeah, it might have. That one sounds familiar. Yeah, it could have been that one. But it
Yeah.
was a very simple app. But yeah, I don't remember exactly what it was off the top of my head.
Yeah. No, I mean, I like that idea though. Writing out with the Apple Pencil to where you get that, I don't know, instead of just being confined to typing. Yeah, you can kind of diagram things.
Yeah, because that way all you have to have is your iPad instead of carrying around a thick stack of flashcards. Because a lot of people do still do the physical flashcards, and that's great, but then they have to carry around a big stack of flashcards. So that's a cool solution for anybody out there, where if you have some kind of like an iPad or something like that, and you would rather like write it out
Yeah.
physically, that's a great idea. I like that.
Yeah, it was huge. I figured it out that worked out for me. And so that's what I
Nice.
did.
Yeah. All right, Tim. Well, yeah, I don't want to take up tons more of your time. We're already at an hour. So the last thing we always ask is, what would be, if you summed up your top 3 tips to people that are still trying to figure out their own study process?
Yeah,
what
I
would
think
those
the
be?
biggest thing that I like tell everyone that asks me about this stuff is listen to the podcast first, to kind of gain exposure to these ideas, and hear about other people's experiences. So I'd say that's the first thing. The second thing is incorporate re-review into your study, and that's the form of like taking your cumulative multiple choice. Then the third thing is, get that done in the morning, before you
Yeah.
start your day.
Yeah.
Prioritize. I think I would like read the Bible a little bit or do something like that, and then I jump into it. But it was still like one of the first things that I was doing each day, and it was huge because every time that I've tried to do something else for school and I leave it to the end, it just doesn't work the same. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Those are great.
Awesome.
Thank you, Tim.
Yeah. Yeah. Thanks for doing the call, Tim. It was awesome to hear your story. And yeah, I'm glad you found us and that it, just worked for you so well. And congrats on being done.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you guys for
Congratulations.
putting it together. Really appreciate it, and I appreciate the podcast too, being a way to hear about how people have been able to do it and get the tests done, because it's huge. I think for people, and just being able to get it done when it's like one of the more challenging things that you do in this this profession.
Yeah,
Oh, absolutely.
for
Yeah.
sure.
It's harder than any college class you had, and it's completely up to you. It's just a
For
totally
sure.
different thing.
All right, that was the interview with Tim. I loved that interview. I love that he was so dedicated to passing the CPA exam before he got married, and that he was able to do that with school, with work, with being busy with his fiance. He was able to do all of that with the SuperFast CPA strategies. And again, not only that, he was able to pass the CMA exam using the SuperFast CPA strategies. So again, if you have questions or you're like, can I do the CMA exam with the SuperFast CPA strategies? You 100% can, and you can apply the SuperFast CPA strategies to a lot of different exams. We don't necessarily have all the study materials for it, but the pro course can teach you how to study for just about any exam. So keep that in mind and make sure you share that with people. As we close out this episode, again, make sure you go check out our free 1-hour webinar training on SuperfastCPA.com. Again, we teach the key ingredients to passing the CPA exam for free. It's only 1 hour long, and you're going to want to learn more after you watch that webinar. So you're going to want to buy the pro course, you're going to want to buy the study materials, but it all starts with that webinar. So make sure you go check that out. The link will be in the description of the podcast or the YouTube video, wherever you're listening or watching. Also, make sure that you share this podcast and all the other episodes of the podcast with people you know who are going through the CPA exam. This podcast is one of the best free resources out there for CPA exam candidates. So make sure you share this. It will help a lot of people. If you liked this episode, make sure to leave a rating in the podcast app of your choice, or if you're watching on YouTube, make sure to like it and leave a comment. Thank you for listening or watching. We hope this was helpful, and we will see you in the next episode.